This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Thursday. Before we get on to today's show, let's talk a couple things. Junk silver refers to old circulation coins like dimes, quarters, half dollars, and dollars from back before our government debased our money by removing the silver from our coinage. If you want to hear about sound money, the Cornerstone Forum, which is being brought to Calgary by Silver Gold Bull, we're going to have a sound money roundtable. So a bunch of different speakers talking about that. Vince Lanchi, Tom Luongo, Tom Bodrovics is going to host it, and Ben Perrin. And you might learn some things. I'm talking to myself as much to you. We might learn some things about money and the different forms of it, how it can be used. I don't know. I'm interested to see how that goes. And for once, I'm not the guy hosting it. I'm going to allow Tom Bodrovics from Palisade Gold Radio to host it, and I think that's going to be an interesting conversation. And when you're trying to figure out some things about silver and gold, why not turn to Grahame? He's been, the guy everybody on this side's been turning to. You can text or email him down in the show notes, and he'll answer any questions you may have around buying, selling, storing, or using your retirement accounts to invest in precious metals. And certainly with everything going on, in Canada and around the world, now it's never too late to start to look at things a bit differently. And that's what the Cornerstone Forum is all about, creating that community and getting into some conversations that we normally don't have. And Silver Gold Bull, along with Bow Valley Credit Union, are helping bring that to Calgary, Alberta this year. And so if you're on silvergoldbull.ca.com, just make sure to reference the SNP. I tell you what, I'm enjoying this warm weather. That is, April is going to, let's get to the heat. The other thing, while this time of season is happening, you can count on Guardian Plumbing and Heating. They've been keeping homes, farms, and businesses running smoothly since 2010. And just like the sun's starting to poke out, we can count on it coming more and more here in April. You can count on the team over at Guardian. How they set themselves apart is by making your life easier. They got technicians on shift 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every single day, including weekends, and they don't charge you anything extra for evening or weekend service. That means you can get the help you need on your schedule without worrying about surprise costs. Just go to guardianplumbing.ca for all the information. Ignite Distribution. Shane has been so kind as to give up his spot on the list this week for the kids' sake, or in turn for the kids' sake. We got a meeting coming Monday, April 14th. So that's Monday, this coming Monday, 7 p.m. at the Legacy Center, and we're discussing Alberta independence. And the forum just aims to bring residents together to discuss the viability of Alberta pursuing greater autonomy or maybe full independence from Canada. And we want to open that discussion up. So if you're in and around the Lloydminster area and you want to hear more about that, stop in and, mark it on your calendars and say stop it in. Legacy Center, 7 p.m., Monday night. That's going to be happening. And looking forward to discussing that. I'll be there along with a few other people, and I hope to see you there as well. And now, farmers, I assume you've heard of precision planting and how it's revolutionized farming with innovative technology to boost efficiency and profitability. What started with planter optimization now spans the entire crop cycle, offering hardware, software upgrades that work seamlessly across brands and models, giving you unmatched control over your operation. Locally, GoTech is evolving to serve you even better. Scott, your trusted expert, is still here, and now Jeff is joining their team, bringing fresh energy and ideas. Together, they've committed to delivering the same hands-on support you've come to rely on. And winter conference kicks off this week, so check out the seminars releasing on YouTube to learn more about precision planting and how it's reshaping farming. Just search for GoTech. Substack, free to subscribe to. If you are a paid member, you've been getting the debriefs across all the episodes or after every episode, and today's no different. You can find the debrief on the Substack. Cornerstone Forum news. We are a month away, folks, and that is going to be something May 10th in Calgary. If you haven't got your tickets, I don't know what you're waiting for. Go get your tickets today, and look forward to seeing you there. New studio coming in, sometime here in 2025. and we want you to be a part of it. We want to have your name or your company logo on the legacy wall. We're looking for skills, labors, material, money. Shoot me a text. There's ways to be involved 100%. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, X, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to leave a review. Make sure to retweet. Make sure to do all the things. We rely heavily on you lovely people. All right, let's get on to that tale of the tape. He served as an MPP in Ontario from 2007 to 2022. I'm talking about Randy Hillier. So buckle up. Here we go. So Randy, first off, thanks for joining me.
It is my pleasure, Shaun, and hopefully I've got things working at this end that things are broadcasting on No More Lockdowns Twitter and my Facebook page as well. I'm not sure if it is, but I hope it is.
Well, looks like people are slowly starting to tune in, and I'm sure they'll start chiming in. Either way, I was saying to you before we started, we talked roughly a year ago. It was in June, so just a little under a year ago, and I think we both enjoyed the conversation. It's funny that it's not taken so long to come all the way back to it, but certainly with you hitting the news cycle, with a win, and I want to talk all about that. It prompted me again to reach out to you, and I'm glad you're back on. That all being said, let's walk through this because when it comes to wins in the courts, they've been few and far between. It doesn't mean that the wins haven't been impactful; they certainly have. But when we get a win, we got to shed some light on. We got to talk about it. And you, sir, are the most recent. So walk us through April 7th's news and bring people up to speed.
Well, let's start first off. This is the first win on a constitutional question in Canada over the mandates that were promoted in all of, in this case in Ontario, but they were similar mandates everywhere in the country. So this is there's been some wins on provincial matters. But generally speaking, the upper courts have rejected the idea or rejected the constitutional questions like they did with the travel and the quarantine constitutional question brought forward by Peckford and others. So, why this is so important, I feel, it signals that some of the highest courts in our land now have the courage and the wisdom to reflect on what happened during COVID and to rule that the fundamental freedoms of Canadians needed protection from government. And the decision is well written. It's done at the Ontario Court of Appeals, so it is the highest court in Ontario. If the Crown dislikes it and wants to try to overturn it, they have to seek leave of appeal at the Supreme Court of Canada. So this is a big decision. It will have far-reaching consequences across the country. And now our courts say peaceful assembly is a required. It requires protection because all other freedoms, freedom of expression, freedom of association, cannot be exercised if there is not freedom of assembly. So this has been a long time coming. It's 4.5 years I've been fighting this. It came down to, I was originally charged with 25 violations under the Reopening Ontario Act, each one with up to $100,000 in fines and a year in jail. There was 20 of those charges had been withdrawn by the Crown attorneys in various parts of Ontario, but there was 5 little buggers who wouldn't let go. Crown attorneys in Cornwall and Brockville and Peterborough and Belleville were vigorous and belligerent in their attempt to prosecute me. So It's nice now that the courts have said, yes, this Reopening Ontario Act and their restrictions on peaceful assembly was not constitutionally valid. Now the next step is, should the courts strike down the law in its entirety, or should the courts read into the law some other language that would have made the law valid? So we've still got another little bit to go on this, but I'm optimistic and confident that reading the decision, we will have won the day, and the remedy is is obvious to everybody, that the peaceful assembly must be certainly and highly protected in our country. Otherwise, we do not have a free nor democratic country.
Yeah. So, from my understanding, then, like, there's a period now after this has been decided, or I don't even know the proper terminology. Randy, you can help me out there. And now there's this period of time where things can happen from both sides. Am I correct in that?
Yep. So they ruled that the law was invalid, that it violated the
Charter rights.
charter rights. Now, what is it? What is it they are to do about this? For example, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth or anything, but the Crown may come back and say, well, the law would have been valid if we had put a limitation of 10 or 50 or 100 on a peaceful assembly, or something else, whatever their imagination may come up with. But I think, looking at the decision and the academic, there was both the matter of, in the question of law, but the three judges also relied heavily on some important academic writings on the necessity for freedom of assembly in a democratic society. So, I don't want to jump the gun or jump the shark on this one, Shaun, but I'm confident that we will end up in a good spot when this is all said and done.
Well, it is a bright spot, right? You think of how many court cases have been thrown out, or how many challenges on different things have been just walked over, and everything else. You, sir, would know all too well about all the different cases going on. So when it come across, you're like, holy crap! Like, did we ever think we'd see a day where any of this would possibly happen? And certainly knowing that they might come back with, we're going to make a restriction of 100 people or something like that. I'm like, oh. I'm sure they're going to put something in, or try to at least do that. That's been, I don't know, the standard playbook since the beginning, hasn't it? To try and put in different rules to try and stifle the win, if you would.
Absolutely. But, we also have a preponderance of evidence now as well, which wasn't available in the early days. We have the American Congressional Review on the COVID-19 pandemic. We have the Alberta government's review on the COVID pandemic. We now have irrefutable evidence that all of these mandates were ineffective or were more injurious than the virus that they were proposing or stating that was so dangerous. So, we now know without question the virus did not come from a bat in a wet market in Wuhan, that it was the result of a gain of function research paid for by the American taxpayers at a virology lab in Wuhan. We know concretely now that the jabs were ineffective and they were not safe. There was substantial injuries and fatalities as a result. The social distancing, the 6-foot rule, the masking, the lockdowns, all were ineffective. So, we're fortunate in this regard that evidence is now available to the judges. So I think that evidence will have substantial weight in the deliberations, and that no longer can the courts just take deference to cockamamie ideas promoted by our government, but there must actually be a demonstrable justification for it.
Yeah, well, once again, my hat's off to you for going through the process. I was saying to you before we started, you really cemented roughly a year ago, when we were talking about civil disobedience, and you said something along the lines of, if you're going to do civil disobedience and you haven't thought about prison time or I mean, like, all the fines they're putting against you, like, you're not serious about civil disobedience if you're not really willing to go to jail for what you believe in. And when I listen to you talk and all the different things they threw at you, and then to the audience, if you go back, and I should have pulled it up here. I'll pull it up real fast because it's episode 669. So you got to go a ways back on the podcast. If you go listen to our first chat, you walk me through a whole bunch of history of some of the civil disobedience, specifically in Ontario. And honestly, it's pretty wild for this Westerner to go back and listen to parts of that, because it's it's a good chunk of Canadian history that is kind of just like lost to the abyss if you don't know where to look and who to listen to. And certainly on this side, I guess I just come full circle of my hats off to you, because you're seeing things through, and now maybe getting some success. Well, not maybe, you're getting some success, because I think getting the win in court is a big deal.
Oh, it is, and this coupled with the Mosley decision as well, Shaun, where Mosley ruled that the government did not meet the constitutional, its statutory authority to implement the Emergency Act. Anybody in the Ottawa courts and elsewhere who have been convicted, this opens a door for those convictions, is for some of them anyway, to consider having those convictions overturned and the monetary penalties reimbursed. So, again, we'll have to wait for the final decision, but, we now know that by Mosley that there was no emergency in Ottawa. We now know from the Court of Appeal that the assembly, the peaceful assembly, was a protected right and cannot be criminalized. A protected right can't be criminalized. So hopefully this will weigh heavily and in favor for Leach and Barber, and for many others. Today, there's the case of Donnell is in court. The case of Remley is back in court soon. Meister, there's hundreds of unknown Canadians, Shaun, who have been victimized by our legal system, who go unknown to most. And hopefully these decisions will be utilized by them to remedy the injustice that they have felt.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, Randy. Like, we know Tamara and Chris just recently, right, guilty of mischief, and we wait now, for what that means and everything else. And those two names are quite obviously prominent. Everybody, for the most part, knows who those two names are. But you talk about the countless names that nobody knows about. That's a really important point, because it wasn't just two people who stood up. It was an awful lot of Canadians who all stood up all at once. And the Coots boys out in Alberta are victims of it as much as the rest of them. And it goes without saying that there's how many of them are just unnamed and nobody knows who they are, and they're facing the machine by themselves, or I shouldn't say by themselves, just without the greater public knowing who they are.
Yeah, but and there's again countless hundreds, but this was also the harm and injury that we did to the greater population with our COVID mandates, like that needs to be remedied as well, Shaun. And I think this is, it's really pleasing to me, but optimistic that these three judges, because our courts were captured by the same fear and the same level of subject to the same level of scorn and vitriol, not that for others during COVID who spoke out. So they were, now it's showing that they have found their footing, that they can not just be deferential to this these government policies, but yeah, there is a law there that is important, in their role and their responsibility is of significant importance. Hopefully, this decision on Monday will spill over into the media, will spill over into the political world, because, as you know, there's only been one government who has taken at least a step to review their policies and their actions during COVID, and that's the Alberta government, and they've attempted to downplay it. But unlike the American Congress, our Parliament has not reflected on their actions. No other provincial government has reflected on the harm and injuries. None of the mainstream media has reflected on their role, and so this is where I'm. It's going to be very difficult, I think, for the media and our politicians to. They will try to ignore this decision, but I'm not going to let them get off the hook easily.
Well, and I and what were we saying? When we first chatted, we were talking about some of the protests, the civil disobedience you did back in the early 2000s, and like the ability to go live. I pushed this to the audience. Last night I texted Randy, and it was quite late. I woke up this morning to him texting back, and then the ability of today's world, at least as it sits right now, to just go live and talk about it. Mainstream is going to do what mainstream always does. I highly doubt they're going to come out in favor of Randy. I could be wrong. Yeah. Hey, they can always surprise me. Hey, I mean, I'll be shocked if they do. But the ability of everyday people to just hop on, watch this, share this, spread it around we've never seen anything in history quite like what we're the ability to do what we're doing right now to circumvent what the narrative tries to hold, right? So this is huge news. It is.
Well, this gives ammunition. This gives knowledge and ammunition to all those who think like us, Shaun, to go to their MLAs or MPPs or the candidates that they're now in the field and say the government's acted without authority. The government's acted in violation of our most fundamental laws. What are you going to do about this now? What are you, Mr. Candidate or Mr. MLA or Madam Premier? Yeah. What are you going to do now when you're faced with this stark evidence that you and the office that you hold acted in violation of the law? And that's what needs to be said to everybody. And that's what, this should give motivation and encouragement for freedom-minded Canadians to hold their elected representatives to account with factual evidence.
I'm curious. A guy with your experiences. You look at where you are now. What are we? 19 days. 19 days away from a federal election. You have once upon a time the Conservatives looking like they were going to win a supermajority, just absolutely lambasting the Trudeau Liberals and the sing of the NDPs, and it just looked like it was going to be a landslide. Fast forward now to where we sit today, and the polls show something different. You have a Carney who, although is to me as heavy-handed as any leader's ever been when it comes to how he, where his events are, how he discourages questions of, the similar group independent media and different things like that. But
As Pierre did with Shadow Davis in Winnipeg.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you watch Singh's NDP almost tank on purpose. That, to me, that's what it looks more and more. They have the porn star on the bus, and then he's taking pictures with the furries, and it's just like this is just bizarre. What is you've been a part of the political scene for an awful long time, and I was saying before we started that my fresh eyes on different things. At times, I just trying to get caught up on how the political scene continues to work and evolve and everything else. Do you think Carney's got a real shot at being the next Prime Minister of Canada?
Well, unless something unexpected happens, or if Pierre runs in and saves a baby from a burning house fire, Carney's going to win. That's there may be something else that happens that is unexpected, but the NDP vote has collapsed. Carney has been very successful in rallying people around the false Canadian flag that he has wrapped himself in. He has wedged. He has taken the wind out of the Conservatives' main sails of Trudeau must go and axe attacks. But he's also wedged the Conservatives into adopting his Team Canada anti-American, anti-Trump agenda. So, and it's interesting, when you look at this trade war and the response by various nations around the world, one of the most vigorous, the two countries that are most vigorously opposing Trump's agenda is China and Canada. Both are espousing and advocating for the same retaliatory trade measures and viewing Trump and America as hostile. Whereas other countries like Mexico, Australia, and Japan and others have said, okay, we're not going to get into a trade war. Let's sit down like mature, responsible statesmen and resolve these differences. I would put that out to your audience. Why is both Pierre and Carney adopting the same tactics as communist China in this? And it should be obvious to the audience why. And they've been, the Liberals have been very successful in, like I said, rallying the left around this Canadian flag that historically, or for the last 5 years anyway, they have been convincingly telling people that they should be ashamed of, that you should fly the flag at half-mast and be ashamed of our past. You should rip down statues of Sir John A. and Queen Victoria and Edward and Ryerson. But now let's rally to this flag, and the Liberal Party is the epitome of representation of that flag. Many Canadians have bought into that narrative, and to our detriment. But so has Pierre. The Conservatives have had cement boots on during this campaign, and didn't realize how skillful the Liberal Party is at communicating or developing new wedge issues. So as we started off, unless something very unexpected happens in the next couple of weeks, Carney will be king.
Just curious, from my eyes, and I guess my curiosity is your thoughts on it. When you watch where Pierre goes right now, he was just in Alberta, and the high number has it at 15,000, the low number has it at, let's say, 7,000 or 8,000. But you get the point. It's a huge gathering. Showed up in Edmonton, and we've seen similar things happen wherever he goes. Compared to Carney, where it has he had some decent numbers, I guess, but you haven't seen, the fanfare, I guess, for Carney as Pierre's gotten, and people relate it to maybe when Donald Trump traveled around and how many people he was getting at his events. Do you think that matters? Well, I mean, obviously it matters, but how much does it matter, I guess, in your eyes, your mind?
So there's two things there. One is the conflation of our system with the American system. And we don't vote for our executive here, Shaun. We vote at the riding. What happens in the riding is what is important. Whereas in the States, those rallies held by the executive for a vote for the executive are very, very meaningful. But here, much less so. If you, I was saying at the beginning offline, there's more seats in Toronto than there is in Alberta. Okay. So, and Alberta will typically vote in at about 75 to 80% of the people are all in on the Conservatives. They're all blue. Right. But they only need, in a three-way race, they only need about 40% of the people to win. So all those other votes above 40 up to 80 are wasted votes, let's say. They aren't going to impact who gets to be the prime minister. The Liberal vote is very much more efficient. It's not as concentrated as it is in Alberta and Saskatchewan. And that's and this is, again, people lose sight. They think that they're voting for Carney or Poilievre, but their names are not on the ballot, and they don't understand the Westminster system of how we determine who the prime minister is. So, and then I guess I would also add one thing. In our last federal election, we had 14 million votes cast, Shaun. Right? 14 million. That's an inconceivable number of people to visualize. But it makes an arena in Edmonton look pretty small in comparison. And historically, and this is bearing out as well, less than 2% of all Canadians have ever attended a political rally. So, are they energetic? Are they visually appealing? Are they, all that is true, but it represents a very, very small sliver of people who are going to vote. So, they're for all those reasons. I know Conservatives aren't going to like that analysis, but I call it the way I see it, and there's a lot of very legitimate, credible pollsters who have been doing a lot of polling. There's some shady characters as well. And I get it. A lot of Canadians aren't going to be able to tell the difference between a shady poll or a skanky poll and a credible poll. But the credible polls are many Conservatives latched on and believed all these polls last summer when Poilievre was head and shoulders above, and now think that they're all garbage today. Well, those polls were correct a year ago. That's why the Liberal Party got rid of Justin Trudeau, because they knew that it was true. And the polls today are also true.
Well, it's been, like over the last year, they must have known Justin Trudeau was in the tanks way back when, right? And they held on and they held on and they held on. No, the weird thing about the Canadian way of, is we don't have a set election date, right? We have this ability to, if we can change it on a whim. So you have this, like, Justin Trudeau's been in the toilet for a long freaking time, in my opinion. And the Liberals waited and waited and waited and waited. And they had a brilliant stroke, an absolute, I hate calling the Liberal. I've been saying it. I hate it. But you got to admire the brilliance of sending Justin Trudeau down to Trump, and Trump doing what Trump does, and them knowing exactly what Trump was going to do, especially to Trudeau.
Yeah.
And it's just, and then they've created this, they've just created this persona now, where all of a sudden the Liberals are the strong people of Canada. I'm just like, this is literally happening in front of my eyes. I'm like, I can't believe it. Like I'm almost, like impressed at their ability to galvanize the population after 10 years. Let's just forget about the last 10 years, Randy. Don't worry about it. We're worried about the next thing, and we're going to get it right. It's like, are we all insane? Have we all lost our bloody minds?
Well, so listen, I was telling, and many others, like, those who understand the Westminster parliamentary process were saying that for over a year that that Trudeau was going to be gone, and I suggested that I was a little bit premature. I suggested that he would be gone in the late fall of 2024. But it was just due to circumstances like the prorogation and the various elements that were going on in Parliament. I was a little bit premature. But again, this speaks, we don't understand, and we are uninformed about our history. But let me give you and the audience an example. In 2013 in Ontario, we had the most hated and despised Liberal premier ever in Ontario politics. His name was Dalton McGuinty. He was under substantial contempt motions in the Ontario legislature. He was in the toilet in the polls. Everything was saying that there was no way he could possibly ever win, and it was during a minority parliament here in Ontario. So in December of 2013, and make note of these dates, in December of 2013, Dalton McGuinty prorogued the Ontario Parliament and called a Liberal leadership race in December. The leadership race was held, I believe, in March of 2014. An unknown, relatively unknown lesbian grandmother named Kathleen Wynne won the Liberal leadership race. She immediately went to the polls and won a majority government. Does that sound like a parallel to what has just happened with the federal Liberals? A discredited, hated Liberal premier prorogues Parliament, has a leadership
Sounds
race.
like a playbook, yeah.
So, like, these are, this is the way it's been going on for ages, Shaun. And
Well, then let's
and all it is to put a new puppy in the window that the electorate can gawk at and say, "Isn't that a nice shiny new puppy?" And it's so fuzzy and adorable, and it's got to be much better than the the old hound dog that just left. Flea bitten, flea ridden hound dog. And it's a tried and true process in our system.
Well, here's one of the things I'd asked you, or we talked about before we started. Ellie Matlock says, so Alberta's only choice is go independent only. Things will not change if we don't, plain and simple. Your thoughts, like one of the things I was saying, if you play out the scenario where the Liberals get back in and Carney is literally the prime minister, and, he's caught, saying, what was his statement the other day, folks, on Daniel Smith? Basically, sit down. And you're like, you can already see where this is going. And Albertans, to me, I could be a little bit off on this. Maybe I'm just a smidge off. I don't know. But everywhere I look, it feels similar to the convoy. And I don't mean that all of a sudden semis are going to Ottawa, just in the sense from the public. There's this conversation percolating right now, and everybody is banking on Pierre is going to win, and it's going to simmer down. But if Carney gets in, right, as we're talking here, you can already feel it reaching a feverish pitch real fast that Albertans are not happy. And their independence is, this referendum idea, we got to get out of here. We can't keep doing this. What advice would you have for Albertans if the Carney thing comes to fruition?
Well, it makes no difference whether it's Carney or Pierre, though. That's that's what the audience needs to realize. Like,
I understand, but to me, if Pierre gets in, the everyday public, it's no different than your prorogation.
Yeah.
Why is it that prorogation and the new leader and shiny puppy, all of a sudden, everybody's just like, oh, this will be way better. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Like, I wish I could shake people and go, it doesn't, like Alberta independence. We need to search that idea out more. But the truth of the matter is, if Pierre gets in, it's the shiny. It doesn't matter. The everyday public is going to go back to sleep or just be like, everything's fine, and he's going to put out all the flames on the house, and we're good to go. Yeah. If Carney gets in, everybody goes, what? What just happened?
Yeah. So the difference, the way I would evaluate this, the difference with Poilievre, you're correct. There is in the West, there is a greater expectation that he will actually represent Western interests more so than what Carney will do, so the elevated demands will be subsided for a period of time with Pierre. But in the course of time, those demands will not be met. The expectations will not be met. He's proposing that we ought to view the Americans and Trump in terms of hostility. It should be obvious to everybody in Canada that America will never tolerate a hostile neighbor on its border, on its largest border. But you're right. Like, people are falsely viewing Carney as a far greater problem than Poilievre. And so those desires for independence will be subsided. But, the people in Alberta, in my humble opinion, Shaun, need to take advantage of what is happening with Trump in the United States and either demand break this constitutional paralysis that we've been in for 40 years, to demand a new deal in Confederation, or, and this should be done simultaneously, in my view, is do a referendum with some clear questions to either try to fix what's wrong with Confederation, or in the alternative, if it can't be fixed, then seek some other alliance or independence outside of Confederation.
Yeah, I agree. I just to me, like knowing a bunch of your story, one of the things I admire is you found a way to get public support for the bold actions that you did. Right, you go back to the days of hunting deer or putting cattle on the streets in Ottawa and different, shutting down one of the largest highways. You just didn't do that willy nilly. Like, to me, there was a lot of strategy involved in what you did.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about, separating, if the abuse continues and you decide to separate, we got to get out of this relationship. This is not healthy. There has to be strategy involved, because the everyday Albertan, everyday Canadian, like, what are we all trying to do here? We're trying to find a way to get the everyday Canadian involved in politics, because for too long it feels like, and I'm speaking to myself as much as anyone watching this or listening, is for too long I was idly by on the sidelines, not really paying attention, didn't think it really mattered. And now you go, in order to win public support for something as serious as, hey, we're out of this country, we're not doing this anymore, you got to pick your spots, and your timing has to be bang on. And to me, if Carney wins, there is a time there. There is a moment in time where you can galvanize a huge chunk of the Albertan population. Pierre wins, it just subsides. It doesn't mean that you should stop working on it, but we both can agree. What favors that movement more, Carney or Poilievre? Simple, Carney, because people are upset and done with the Liberals.
Yeah.
Simply put.
But this is where the people of Alberta should be looking at, when you're looking at strategy and whatnot, you have to look at, what is it that is the objective, Shaun? What objective do the people of Alberta want? Do they always want to be held hostage to central Canada, making the decisions about where their pipelines will go, who they can export their markets to, what attack will happen on the energy field, go on and on and on, and they should be saying, okay, this is unacceptable, and we are a economic powerhouse in this country, and we could be far more. But as long as Ontario has 24 senators and Quebec has 24 senators and the entire West only has 24 senators, who's going to control the second house, which is a requirement? So, Manning talked about this, about an equal effective Senate years ago. There's a requirement for our Constitution to be fixed. The distortions and the corruptions within our Constitution will always hold Alberta back to the interests of central Canada. Do you always want to be in that position, Alberta? Because that's regardless of whether Pierre or Carney. So use this time of Trump reinvigorating a national identity, a national industry and manufacturing program, the utilization and harvesting of our natural resources to create wealth. Use that time to either try to fix Confederation, and this is the leverage, or we're leaving. Quebec has been very successful using that same strategy since the 1960s. And if you got to get in, as I said about peaceful civil disobedience, and you brought it up earlier. You've got to be prepared for the consequences. You got to show people that you're serious. And if you're not prepared to hold a referendum, you're not serious. about fixing constitutions or fixing anything. You're too fearful to even have a referendum to know what you want. Like, referendums are a fundamental and essential tool in a democracy to give people, to give the voice back to people. I think, any MLA in Alberta can introduce a motion to establish a referendum on a question. Put some heat on, put some pressure on, Smith, and do so with the eye to get to the objective. And the objective is not to be the 51st state. The objective is not to have independence. The objective is to have a free, healthy, prosperous Alberta. And whether that comes with a changed constitution, or whether it comes through independence or association with the states, well, let that be dealt with at a later date. But let's show people that you're serious first.
Yeah. Well, I listen. I agree with what you're saying there, Randy. But just to me, the pressure comes when I don't know. And maybe I'm thinking about this wrong. You can definitely change my mind. I'm always open to different thoughts, but to me, it feels like right now there's a conversation bubbling, and everybody's waiting in a holding pattern to see what happens April 28th. And the sad, or just the realistic state of it is if you get one outcome, the conversation subsides. Now, is it for 6 months, 6 years? I can't tell you that. If another outcome happens overnight, you have probably pressure like we've never seen in Alberta, at least going back to the one I recall is 2019 with Wexit, right? And the more people that I talk to that are older than me who've been staring at this for years upon years, there's been a movement just kind of idling there. And it's in Alberta, specifically Alberta, this has been a conversation for a lot longer than just the time that Shaun's been paying attention to it. And there are these waves when all of a sudden the sentiment just grows, right? In 2019, I always go back to Wexit. Like it was immediate, and there was town halls probably within a week of the election, just packed.
Yeah.
And you have this short period of time where you can really galvanize a group of people of this could work. And if we're serious about Carney getting in, that means there will be a moment in time where you can galvanize a force to push and to light the fire underneath Daniel Smith and MLA's feet to push for a referendum, to push for, we need the question. We want to have a serious discussion about this.
I'm just thinking back, the West has been, and especially Alberta, has been chewing on this bone for so long. And, the Social Credit Party under Ernest Manning was in a serious constitutional battle with Ottawa, and developed and tried to introduce Alberta's own currency to get away from the boot and the thumb of Ottawa. And then Preston in the 1980s with the Reform Party, and the West wants in. This has been going on.
So why hasn't it worked? Why hasn't it worked? I listened to all these names, and there's just so many of them. Why does it never work?
Well, so we've had differences. More tools have become disposable, have become available to us, Shaun. We now have the Clarity Act. So, in the 30s and the 80s, into late 80s, this changed. But there wasn't the Clarity Act to have a certain process to leave Confederation. That's changed now. We now have a clear way of doing things. So, we need to use the new tools that are available to us today, and you have to be serious about it. Or you should be serious about it. So, I think Quebec, in large part, has utilized this strategy. The Quebec politicians have utilized this strategy, not so much to actually leave, but to gain greater benefit from Confederation, and greater transfers, and etc. But I think Alberta, if hasn't really been serious, and they've always been, well, yes, if the blue team and Pierre comes in, we're going to be all okay now. But let's not forget, it was Brian Mulroney and the blue team who gave rise to bloody reform. Wake up, boys and girls. Let's get serious. Do you want to have a great future for your children and your grandchildren? Do you want to have a prosperous, free society? Or do you want to be running around at under the rainbow flag at pride parades and kowtowing to Ottawa in your dresses and high heels to make a difference? Like, come on. This is get serious, and I mean that, get serious. Politicians and the law are utilized for somebody's benefit, and in Canada, they're not utilized for the benefit of the person or the individual. They're utilized for the benefit of a very few, very wealthy, Central Canadian, the family compact, that still remains in Canada and still controls our Constitution.
Before I let you out of here, when you say you got to get serious, I'm wondering, I go back to our conversation prior. I keep bringing it up. It was a fantastic conversation if you haven't listened to it. But, when you say you got to get serious, what did it take back earlier in Randy's life when you started, you started standing up to the police and the government and started to win public favor? Was it a group of people? Was it a conversation had? Was there an instance where you're like, it's time to get serious? Like, this can't continue.
Of course, it was. It's like, which one of the straws was the straw that broke the Randy Hillier back, and got me out of the house? I can't remember, because there were so bloody many of them. But and it wasn't just me. It was, other like-minded people in Lanark County whose livelihoods were being threatened, whose futures were being deprived and diminished. I remember that the four of us sitting around that kitchen table at Merle Bowles' house saying, well, we better get serious. We better do something about this. And we went out and had a town hall and told people what we thought. And lo and behold, we found that there was a great many other people who shared our sentiments and shared our views, and who were willing to put boots on the ground to
forgive me, four people. It's there's scripture about ideas and as small as a mustard seed and it grows, right?
Yeah.
On this side, you always think it has to be 50 people in a room, right? Yeah. It has to be but if I heard that correctly, you just said four of us got around a kitchen table, supper table, having coffee, and said, it's about time we get serious. So you called the town hall, and if 10 people show up or 2 people show up, you go, well, maybe we were wrong. I don't know. Okay. Yeah. Instead, people showed up and you're like, holy crap, there's something here.
Yeah.
Is that's what I'm hearing, correct?
Well, yeah, it was funny. we had like 100 people show up in this little community hall in Lanark County. And I was not a public figure. None of us were public figures. I was an electrician. Merle was an organic vegetable grower. Brian had a strawberry and raspberry farm. John had a cash crop, corn, wheat, and beans. There was nothing, and we just said we're going to do something. Now, what was funny? Like three of us were overjoyed that there was 100 people came out to hear these four unknown rural rednecks, or whatever we want to call them. One of those guys said to me after, he says, that's garbage. We should have had 500 people here. If we can't get 500 people. Well, the hall was overflowing, and there wasn't a standing room left in the hall. And needless to say, we took the optimistic route that having 100 people come out to hear us was optimistic, not the pessimistic route. But and those halls would grow and grow into 5 and 6 and into 1,000 people across the province. But we were serious. We were, and we were. I don't know why, but our methods and our messages were simple to understand, and resonated and empowered people to also get serious.
Well, Randy, I appreciate you hopping on. Maybe it's just a time, it's probably high time for people to get serious. Either way, appreciate you hopping on and doing this. And to everybody who tuned in, there's been a ton of comments. I should, a ton of comments saying basically congrats on your win, or thank you for all you do. Tons of people commenting, thanking you for continuing to stand up for Canadians. And, it's been on this side, it's been enjoyable to get to know Randy through just sitting across from you. One day, hopefully it's in person. Either way, appreciate you hopping on and answering some fellow Canadian questions, and certainly hearing a bit about what's been going on.
Yeah. So listen, I don't see the comments, but listen, I recognize and I value and understand that this was. I could not have done what I did without a great deal of visual, public, and demonstrable support for my for this. So, so I want to extend that appreciation to everyone who has stood by with me and stood up and continued to do so, as well as all there are many people who are behind the scenes, who don't want to be known publicly, who are helping me in the legal battle. But also a thank you to the JCCF and John Carpe for their funding and doing this constitutional question. And let's continue to build and demand freedom in our country. And prosperity, and I look forward, and hopefully if you're ever this way to Lanark County, you can drop into Scuttlebutt Lodge. If anybody else who's tuning in, they can go to nomorelelockdowns.ca, and I've got a little camp here that people can rent out that also helps support my advocacy, and I would keep an eye out as well on my social media. I'm doing a series called Canada, an owner's manual, a user's guide and owner's manual to help people understand just how our system really works. So jump on those, and it's been a pleasure, as always, Shaun, speaking with you, and we'll hope to do it again soon, and Maybe we'll do it again when we finally beat these criminal charges that I'm still fighting with. Or when we have encouraged some Alberta MLAs to demonstrate their backbone and their conviction and introduce a motion for a referendum in Wild Rose Country.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah.
Randy,
now,
thanks for hopping on.